Armand.
Armand. Okay. I just want to
Welcome
make sure.
everybody back to another one-on-one episode of Trios. We have a special guest today, Liana Kargas. Is that or Kangas? Is that correct?
Kangas. Yeah.
Kangas.
Yeah.
Uh, Liana, how would you describe yourself to somebody who's never met you? They see you on the streets. How would you introduce yourself? You know what I'm saying?
How would I introduce myself? I would introduce myself as a very weird, very fun, bizarre, dog loving, music loving, comic loving person.
There we go.
I like super bright colors and weird, mysterious thriller horror stuff, which is kind of funny because you would think that that would totally interact each other. I enjoy good art. I enjoy comedy. I enjoy good music. And most of all, comics is like one of my favorite formats. So I obviously love drawing and reading comics. So
There we go.
yeah,
I like bright colors too. We're gonna get along just fine. And
perfect.
you actually, well, first I want to ask, well, so I met you or I saw you because our good friend Pat Shand, uh, he made a post. I think you did a book with him. Is this true? Or are you going to do
Yeah,
a book with
so
him?
I did a short with him. He was actually he was my first published comics work. I did a short for the Mayan anthology, which is actually part of his Destiny in New York
Yeah.
series. So, like, he ended up compiling that later on with all the other short stories too, which is really cool. Yeah, yeah. So, and it's weird because, like, I think we met from Facebook. Like, I started adding a whole bunch of comic creators on Facebook at the time when I moved in the tri-state area, and Pat and Joe and a couple other people were the first ones that like added me from like recognizing me from Twitter, which was really cool. So that's how I
That's
found
great.
out about that
Are
gig.
you? Did you say you're in the tri-state area? Is that what
I
you
used
said?
to be. I
You used
used
to
to
be.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
For
miss
some
it a little, but I also really love. I'm in Memphis now, and I really love
Memphis.
it here. So
Oh man, oh man. Yeah, for some reason I thought you were from Italy or something, but that's cool to know that you were from here, and then that's how you met everybody. I just want to share this in case Pat's watching, because we did have a great meetup, and that's him right there, our good friend Pat
oh
Shan.
my gosh, that's awesome.
so,
I
so
love
here we
everyone's
are.
outfits too. It's perfect.
I like that guy a lot. He's fun. He's a lot of fun and shot some video. But you know, because Kelly made me send you questions, let me ask you some of those questions. So who is Kelly? Can you maybe tell me a little bit more about Kelly?
Yes, of course. So Kelly is actually my virtual assistant. She's wonderful. I would not get anything done without her. Her and I actually met at it was either Heroes Con or New York Comic Con a couple of years back, and she's
Oh, okay.
commissioned me for some of my work. She's a fan of She Said Destroy, and so when I had to hire an assistant, she applied, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." Yeah, it worked
Perfect.
out great. So,
Oh, it's great to hear. That's great to hear. She's another comic fan, honestly. Um,
oh
so
yeah,
so
huge comic fan. Yeah.
so question number one: what drew you to comics? How long ago were you just like, I want to do this? You know what I'm saying? When did it start?
Yeah. So as I said, like I read comics as well. Like you can tell behind me. I started reading comics when I was younger. Like I read a lot of Spider-Man. I read Batman and Robin, things like that. But then when I was old enough to like collect or like buy books, I read a lot of manga growing up. So I'd like sit at Barnes and Noble, read as much manga as I could, buy as much of it as I could. And then kind of started realizing that I liked indie comics when I started visiting my then local comic shop, Famous Faces and Funnies. And I started finding like all the weird stuff. Like I even bought stuff from Jonan Vasquez at the time, like all of his weird stuff like Squee and things like that when I was like a young teen. And then I got into like indie comics, like Phonogram is one of the ones that I always talk about. A lot of Image comics back in the day, and it was then that I had realized, like when I started going to conventions and stuff, I was like, I'd really love to like draw comics, but I didn't really know how to break in. And
Hmm.
then when I actually moved to Canada for a couple years, and when I was there, I started pursuing and like trying to figure out how to do it. Worked at a comic shop for a long time, and then when I had the chance in the tri-state area when I moved to Jersey, I was able to start pursuing comics. And again, that first thing that I did with Pat Shand, and then my first creator-owned book with like Joe Corallo, She Said Destroy, and a ton of shorts and pitches and tons of other stuff since then. So it's kind of all
Oh, that's
started from
awesome.
there.
So
Yeah.
the actual art wise, you said, did you always know how to do sequentials, or is it something you learned over time and you really focused on it to try to break in?
I think it's something I learned, especially as like a reader for
Hmm.
decades. I think it's something that you learn to like tool your own storytelling style. But I have actually taken tons of art classes growing up. I didn't go to school for art specifically, but I did take like fine art oil painting and like
Yeah.
drawing like one and two and three and like things like that. I was in like AP art in high school, so it was kind of nice to do that. And then, you know, when you're working on stuff, it's nice to connect with your peers and get like good critique and feedback. I think that's like how you grow. That's awesome.
No.
That's it. End of the first issue. That's perfect. And like that first issue, I think is going to be for free next week through Vault's website. So
Amazing. It's funny because you said you didn't study art, and so when did you like kind of really try to pursue? You said you were jumping around a lot. You really like comics. When did you like did you see a change, or like a shift that comics were coming back, and you're like, is this like you saw a good opportunity? Is that kind of what happened?
it's funny that you asked that question because I don't know if I've ever talked about that. I did illustration for a while and I thought that that's what I really wanted to do. But I met my friend Daryl Graham when I worked at a comic shop back in Canada. And Daryl Graham is like a really big animator. And him and I got connected as like peers and friends. And he kept saying, like, you keep going back to comics, like why aren't you pursuing that, why aren't you drawing comics, like just got to do it. And so like that was like a good nudge that I always think about, that I remember, because he was like, you remind me of like these masters, like your style fits like these three like of my favorite artists, like you should read more into their work and like develop your style and like things like that. And that really helped, I think, because then that gave me the kick to like, I did like a short with my friend Jimmy Savage, who's the flatter on True Cult. We had done a short, like doing that short with Pat, and I think I've done tons of like smaller like anthology pieces. Really help you start out with trying to figure out like if sequential work is for you, because it's
Yeah.
you're fitting a lot of work into sometimes like a short deadline. So this, I think that was probably the breaking point in between like illustration, but I still like, I love doing covers and stuff like that, and I feel like that definitely pulls on the illustration side of things. So it's difficult to choose which one I like more, but I'm glad that my illustration style like is made for like, a single issue and like trade covers and stuff.
No, definitely, definitely. So the next question and is, where do you find inspiration when you're drawing? So say you got this cover, you know what I'm saying, you get for your illustrations mostly. Like where do you like not only find inspirations, like what art styles you draw inspirations from, and even what helps you get in the mood? You play a playlist, a song, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm a big music person, so sometimes like if I'm stuck or like art block or anything like that, I will actually drum for a while and like step away and like do
Do you
stuff.
say drum?
Yeah, I'm a drummer too as well. So it that actually really helps a lot. Like any type of like block or even when I'm feeling like overwhelmed with like any amount of work that I have or whatever, that helps to like step away. But I love like art books are really cool. And watching TV sometimes. Music is a big one for me. But I think stepping away and like taking breaks like refuels or like resets, and I think that's more inspirational, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like you can look at things, like I like sometimes vintage shopping and stuff. Sometimes you'll run across like items or like weird vintage illustrations and stuff like that that kind of kickstarts ideas for me and stuff.
Picture of you is building up my head, Liana. So you're a rock star, you're a comic artist. You know what I'm saying? It's really like what I call it's really just forming this picture, and we're getting
Thank
to know
you.
you. I like it. I like it. So so what are you working on next? What are you working on next?
So we're wrapping up True Cult with IDW right now, and I am finishing two pitches that are very fun. I'm working for a short for a publisher that I can't say yet, and I'm working with another publisher at the end of this year that I can't say yet. So nothing's been announced, but they're really big and awesome, and I'm really excited. But the things that I do have coming out that are like coming up soon is True Cult is out in August. That's my creator-owned series with Scott Brian Wilson. It's fast food, crime, heist, horror,
Yeah.
burgers, like fun cast and crew. If you like stories about like friendship and stuff and like
Mhm.
slight supernatural and horror, you'll like this. And I have covers coming out from both like IDW. I have like a Picard Star Trek cover coming out. Dark
Okay.
Spaces by Scott Snyder and Hayden Sherman. I have a variant cover coming out with that. And I have End After End by Vault, series by DB Andry, Tim Daniel, Sanando, and Kurt Michael Wilson. I'm doing all the variant covers for that as well. So that's going to be really fun because
Blowing my
it's
mind,
like,
Liana. I think you're the biggest artist celebrity we've had on this show so far. Uh, at least in the mainstream, I would say so. You're working on, you're doing so many things, and it's great to hear. It's great to hear.
thank
Um,
you.
okay, so then obviously we got to ask the question everybody wants to know. Okay, you've worked with our good friends Joel or Joe Corello
Hmm.
and Pat Chan. All right. So what
Hmm.
are what's the favorite book you've done or favorite art you've done? You know what I'm saying? Who's your what was the favorite project you worked on maybe?
Well, that's like trying to pick which is your favorite child, right? Like
That's right. That's right.
that's hard. But I do have to say that you mentioned Joe. So Joe and I actually got the chance to co-write something for TKO Studios, and
Mhm.
that was called Seeds of Eden. It was in the Tales of Terror like compilation, which is all like horror stories. And Paul Azaceta, who did like Outcast, and he's doing like Punisher right now, he did the art for that. So Joe and I co-wrote this like very dark, very horror sci-fi story, and I think that's one of the fun things I got to do, which ended up propelling me into like writing more. And I did another horror story by myself. I wrote it for Adam Gorham, did
Like,
the art, and it was like a follow-up from something that I drew for Eric Palicki in a previous what's called Deadbeats, and that's actually also edited by Joe, which is funny, through a Wave Blue World. So that has been a really cool experience, and like also working on True Cult because it was previously like a Kickstarted thing, and like we had full control over it, and we did everything
mhm.
like DIY, and like worked really hard on it and had such a great community. Like that's been such an amazing experience, and for it to go to IDW and like be like presented this year is like such a cool feeling. Like we're so excited about it. So I
You
gotta say,
mentioned
like,
you
all
mentioned you
that.
had your own Kickstarter, and that's
Hmm.
amazing. I was that was actually something I definitely want to ask is if you were trying to do more stuff like this, and this looks awesome. We saw it was very
Yeah,
successful.
I gotta say, after doing True Call, that was during the pandemic, so like the pitch wasn't necessarily picked up by any publisher
Mhm.
100% because everything during the pandemic kind of like paused. So it's nice to have like control and like do it all ourselves, but also it made me realize like telling stories that you want to tell and not giving up on a pitch just because it's not picked up, like if I have the time to dedicate to that, like that's so important to me, which
Yeah.
is really cool to just do like, more original stories.
Definitely, definitely, and that's generally the community that I kind of just jumped into this year, and it's very welcoming. It's very cool, and we're all here to support each other and build this indie
Yes.
crowdfunding comic industry together. And it's something that's
Yeah.
just starting to really take off, and I'm excited for where it's headed. Um,
Crowdfunding comics is so important. And I think that there's so many new platforms too, which is awesome. Like, you have Crowdfunder and Zoop and like Kickstarter
mhm.
and like there's like another
Indiegogo,
one
there's
that
yeah,
like
there's so many.
so many, and there's so much money being like flooded in. Even
Mhm,
like Dauntless Stories is kind of like similar concept, but
mhm.
like that community is so tight knit and supportive
Yep.
and great. And I just love it because you're really doing like the full experience. You are your own publisher, you are your
Yep.
own like editors and like all that stuff. Like, incredible. So much work, and hats off to every comic creator that does that because it's a lot of work.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you know, because you've done it. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Tips for future and new artists. Okay, so what you kind of touched on it before. We talked about the art block. We talked about you kind of just learning as you were doing it, for the sequential wise. Any really tips you have? I know there are a lot of people out there who want to kind of do comic art, or maybe they've done it a little bit and they haven't found their success. Any kind of tips you can give them?
Yeah. So, one thing that I was told a long time ago that I still remember is like drawing comics, just do it. Just do it as much as you can. You don't necessarily need like an editor to tell you to like draw some comics. Just like if you have the time to do it, just do it. Even if you're going to publish it or not, like learning as much as you can and doing more, you'll get better and better at it. Two is connect with your peers at your level because you really have like this like ingrown support system or like collaborators that you'll keep using over and over again. Like it's been like an on-running joke, but it's true. Like Gab Contreras and I work together all the time, but she was one of the first people I met on comics Twitter, and we still always work together. It's like you build these like really close relationships, and like
Yeah.
you'll always want to lean on each other, whether or not you're friends or really close peers or anything like that. And like eventually you'll start getting job offers so that you can give to other friends and people, or like support like like who do I know that I could recommend for a cover, right? Like I have a long list of like all my peers that I grew up with. So it's nice to have that. And I think too, it's so good to remember that you have those people when like things are hard to get through because like sequential and like drawing comics and like really just doing art as like freelancing, sometimes it's like isolating and it can get kind of hard or like a little maybe
Mhm.
monotonous, but like having those peers like sending each other work in progress, and like it's like cool to like spark
Yeah.
ignite that like passion that like kind of like being in art class again with like a whole bunch of
Mhm.
friends, but like
Mhm.
you're all working on your own thing and like you have a book when it's done, like it's great. So
Mhm.
I think that
Yeah.
that's important.
Tell everybody. I think the biggest mistake I made this mistake again. I just back in January is like I felt like I had to do it all alone.
Yeah.
Especially when I was launching my first Kickstarter, it was one of those things where that was probably the biggest mistake. And because not only was it a mistake, it's just like it's more fun when you do it as part of the community. And I had to learn that and just to really jump in, and there's people out there to support you. Said on Twitter, what I'm saying? Yeah, like these people you can just be online, and they're out there, they're out there,
Yeah.
they're your peers, and you just have to find them, right? And
Exactly.
yeah, it's something that I'm doing a lot more of. We connected, and that's super cool. But me and Pat, we met like last month and stuff like that. But yeah, now we're building this relationship where we're all growing together, and where
Mhm.
we're going to be. We have long comic journeys ahead of us. So that's the way I kind of approach things. It's like, yeah, like who do I kind of want to be step in step with. So
Yeah. I've
definitely
had a
want to.
lot of creators like ask me how to connect with people, and the only
Mhm.
reason why I bring this up is because I recently had some of my Patreon ask, but like people kind of say like, well, how do I end up finding those people, right? Like, how do I find my peer groups and stuff like that? And I was like, Twitter is one. Two, if you have favorite creators that you like reading their work and stuff like that, and you have books that you've done, there's no shame in like walking up to the table and gifting somebody like a zine or something that you've worked on, just to be like, hey, I like your work, here's a gift, like, right, or something like that. Or finding other creators that you're kind of coming up with to be like, go up to their table and like just talk to them. You know what I mean? Or like if you ever need advice, like go if you're at a convention, ask a question. The worst somebody could say is, "Sorry, I don't have time or a minute." Like, but otherwise, like email me. You know what I mean? Like and
Yeah.
like emailing creators, asking questions. Like if you're looking for the knowledge, it's there. You just gotta like go find it, which is
Definitely. Thank you so much, Liana, for coming on the show. I know you're very busy. It took so we had we had to really plan this in advance with Kelly. But thank you so much for coming on the Treehouse. I think a lot of artists, especially, are going to take a lot of knowledge and take it as learning experiences. So thank you so much for coming
That's
on.
awesome.
And my last
Of
note is,
course.
I love your hair. But that's
Oh, thank you. I just did it. I'm super stoked about it. This is like the coolest.
oh, before I head out, where can people find you? Where can people find you?
Yeah.
All your
So
fans.
you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, my website, anything like that. It's all at Liana Kangas, spelled below. And I love updating on Twitter. I also have a Patreon. So if you like community comics, or if you like getting prints in the mail with stickers and like fun stuff, you can always join that. We have a Discord community. It's really fun as well. But otherwise, you can find me social media. A whole bunch of books coming out. Always do updates there. So
Amazing, amazing. Everybody make sure you follow Liana. I'll make sure to put her down in the description. Thanks for hanging out with us and coming on the Treehouse. Have a great
thanks for
day.
inviting me.